Hello, my friends, and welcome. It seems like Ukraine mastered the strikes on Russian oil facilities so much that now it is affecting 2% of the global supply of the oil, sources say. Well, mainly we are speaking about the yesterday's strikes on Nova, which means Novorossiysk, Russian export port, the biggest one in the Black Sea for Russia. Well, Russia still may export some of the oil from Ust-Luga port, but sometimes Ukrainian drones visit that facility as well. And if Novorossiysk is roughly 2% of the global oil supplies, imagine all of this Russian shadow oil fleet and how it is integrated into the world economy. And of course, there are powerful people outside Russia who are interested to push Ukraine to cease those strikes. And actually, it was done already before. Ukraine was told not to strike Novorossiysk or any other Russian oil infrastructure. Just the last year. For example, this is the older article from the last year. Ukraine says Russian oil refineries are legitimate targets. However, our allies in 2024, especially United States of America and Biden's administration, told Ukraine not to continue the strikes on Russian refineries and the other oil infrastructure because Biden was afraid that the oil prices could skyrocket, and definitely they rose by 4%, but this factor was not connected to those strikes. It was just a market speculation where Ukrainian strikes were involved as an excuse to rise the prices for big companies. You see, even now Ukraine intensified the strikes, but the fuel price is not affected that much. And it's not the first time that Ukraine strikes Novorossiysk. There is also the part of the military infrastructure in that bay. Ukraine actually downed one of the largest Russian landing ships in that port. Also not far away from Novorossiysk, an empty Russian oil tanker was hit. All of that happened in 2023 and 2024, but suddenly Ukraine was told to stop and those strikes just vanished until 2025. And the good thing about the current White House administration, I don't really like Donald Trump, you understand, if you watch my videos, but he doesn't give a damn about what Ukraine is doing with the Russian oil. Even though it might affect 2% of the global trades of the oil, everyone is okay with that and no one is panicking. Maybe except Russia. Plus some of the Russian partners who are eagerly searching for the new ways, stable ways to purchase oil. And one of those ways is to get it from the United States of America. So actually what previous administration was afraid of appeared to be kind of profitable after all. So the articles from the March 2024, United States has urged Ukraine to halt strikes on Russian energy infrastructure, Financial Times reports. The nasty thing that it all happened behind the curtains in private conversations with the Ukrainian government. Allegedly, Ukrainian allies blackmailed Ukraine with weapons which are crucially needed for Ukraine to survive against the Russian attack. So we're not going to give you enough of the stuff if you continue the strikes. It is ugly, and Russia, by the time, continued the strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure, including energy facilities. That is what Russia is doing right now, increasing those attacks. But at least today, as we see, Ukraine is capable to respond quite effectively, and allies do not push Ukraine that strong, or do not push at all. By the way, about Novorossiysk, not just the oil was there. As I mentioned yesterday to you, there was the place where Russia put the air defense systems, brand new, state-of-art S-400, the best Russia has. Well, here we have the most recent satellite image. It's a little bit different compared to the Google image. It was taken on November 11th, 2025. On Google image, I counted 8 of the S-400 systems. Well, here on the fresh one, we have 7 of them, but this image is still before the attack of Ukraine, so I'm still waiting for the confirmation, the new image, which will be, of course, published very soon. I hope even today, maybe maximum tomorrow, so 11th of November 2025, a fresh one. There was the huge blast, we all saw it, so potentially it could be very devastating for this Russian military base. And Ukraine actually has the chance to increase the strikes on port infrastructure to make it more difficult, because now Russian air defense in this area is basically disabled. Clearly it's not just a missile detonation. There was after blasts also, and for sure At least one or maybe two air defense systems sustained significant damages or maybe completely gone. Also, Ukraine could aim to the storage of those air defense missiles, which really hurts Russia. I guess they took one of the systems away from this base. As I said to you before, there were 8, now 7, because Putin needs the launcher to protect maybe Moscow more, and the Moscow city is the most protected place out there in Russia. But if the Russian air defense was not capable to shut down Ukrainian Neptune missiles, well, either Russian air defense is not that capable, or Ukrainian-made Neptune missiles are really capable. I would say that it's the best weapon out there. If you check out Neptune missile records, definitely it could be the most capable cruise missile because it downed the Moscow ship, it destroyed the Russian Psyche airfield in Crimea. Russia lost many planes, ammunition, they had to rebuild that airfield. Yeah, the runway is still intact, but the rest, oh, there was a huge fire. And here, Novorossiysk port, 2% of the global trade was stopped by Neptune. Wow. And Ukraine didn't launch many of them. I guess in Novorossiysk there were maximum 5 of the missiles which visited facility and air defense base. So very, very capable one. And Ukraine should invest more in production of Neptune because it is outstanding. Probably the best weapon Ukraine may make. And this video filmed in Novorossiysk that night. Kind of interesting, Star Wars style.
Bir saattir sürüyor. Rafinereyi vurdular.
I wonder what they tried to hit in the night sky with those machine guns. Maybe they cause even damage to their own infrastructure. They launched the flares just to see maybe there are some of the drones or something, but cruise missiles cannot be stopped like that. They thought that those are the drones, but no, those are missiles, and yeah. It was really successful. I guess none of the Neptune missiles were shut down. I think like that because there were no any videos shared with some of the flashes in the sky, the trace of the fallen debris of the missile which been shut down. No, all of the kabooms are ground kabooms, or were ground kabooms in this case. And here we see where the fire was, so that's the pipeline. Russia will have to spend maybe even several months to rebuild this part of infrastructure. But it's not the single point where missiles hit the facility. There were at least 3 spots where missiles hit it. And yesterday, Ukraine hit one of their local refineries in Ruzzia. Locals filmed the fire of this facility. It's not that big. Yeah, all of the videos were kind of distant, but this one shows the fire. So step by step, little by little, Ukraine creates a crisis in the Russian economy, or just boosts it, because Russian economy inevitably will fall down, as Russian officials say. Soft landing of the Russian economy will be in the next few years, but my opinion that it will still take lots of the time for Russia itself to collapse because of the issues in economy, as it was in the Soviet Union. Like, it was wounded for so many years, like more than a decade. It was bleeding out little by little and finally collapsed. For now, Russia still has resources. They produce military. They switch to the military type of economy. Well, not completely, but mainly. Yeah, 40% of their budget goes for military, which is crazy. Those numbers are outstanding. Ukraine is not even close to reach those kind of the fundings for its budget, and that makes Russia to last for extensive period of time, for years and years. And Ukraine will unfortunately retreat from the front lines in multiple of the points. Well, in this particular video, I'm not going to tell about the front lines updates. It's going to be the evening video release, but Russians are taking the ground, and I have to say about it as well. Well, in general, I stay positive because I'm sure that Russian economy will collapse and eventually it will lead to Russian disintegration. But yeah, it will take lots of the years. Also, we have good news from Saratov. There was the strike also the same day as the strike on the Russian Novorossiysk port, and this facility is no go. It's the big one. Yeah, Saratov's refinery, it's one of the biggest in Russia, but Ukraine hit the most sensitive area, the distillation plant, one of the main of those, and facilities no go absolutely. Also, it will take Russia a lot of the time to repair it. And Russian engineers cannot now work because fire continues even now for the second day consecutive. A very important thing for Ukraine, if we speak about strikes on Russian oil and military infrastructure, is to continue those strikes. For Russia not be able to repair those facilities entirely. Russia has maintenance capabilities, it is understandable, but Ukraine should make it impossible for Russia to do. And there is no guarantee, if we speak about Novorossiysk, for example, that even if Russia fixes everything out there, what has been damaged, destroyed, there is no guarantee that there will be no Neptune missile visiting the same place once again. I would say more. There is 100% guarantee that it will happen like that. And the strikes from Ukrainian side, they are getting more precise, more devastative. It is already evident. And Ukraine is more independent also in producing its own long-range weapons. Yeah, Flamingo is wet. I'm telling about it on my channel. But Neptune, it is outstanding. Also, Ukraine puts and invests a lot into the drone production. Drones are capable to carry more of the payload. Ukraine, I think, is best in producing drone boats as well. Drone boats are visiting Tuapse port. Drone boats managed to block Russian Navy fleet in Sevastopol. So there is the surge in quantity and quality of the tools which Ukraine may use against Russian economy, and Russia is using its economy to fuel its war machine. And important thing that Ukraine is not being pressed by our allies any longer. That's great. Wow, no way. Did you know about it? It's like open in America. Oh my God, this is top secret information that was shared by former Mi-6 chief. Wow. Putin wants to turn Ukraine into the next Belarus. Oh my God, I have never thought about it. Wow. If the former intelligence chief says about it, it means that it could be real. And also what he says, that Russia is not willing to stop the war in Ukraine. It wants to continue. That's the Captain Obvious, obviously. Yeah, just listen what Putin says. Translate his words straightforward to English and you'll understand that he doesn't want to finish this war and he wants to occupy Ukraine, of course, at least part of the Ukraine, put the puppet government and to build some sort of the second Belarus from Ukraine. Yes, it is evident. It was evident even before the full-scale war which Putin started on 24th February 2022. Yeah, those experts and articles, sometimes they're kind of fun to read because what's the opening here? Like maybe just pro-Russian narratives are out there that Putin definitely saves the Ukraine from something, but we all know that he wants to occupy Ukraine or force it to be some sort of the pro-Russian state as Belarus. Actually, one more oblast of Russia that has some of the vote in United Nations. That's it. And Putin is not going to stop the war anytime soon because he feels quite comfortable with it. I think he lives in his own moral, informational bubble, and Putin understands this world very differently. For him, this process of war, it is enjoyable. Then he says about 700,000 Russian troops deployed to Ukraine fighting. Actually, Russia deployed those just for the meat grinder, but Putin, then he says about those soldiers, he's smiling. You see how brave our guys are. They're out there fighting for Russia, which he means fighting for me. Also, Putin grown up at the most dark part of the Soviet Union propaganda. After the end of the Second World War, then the reality back then was about the possible war between communist Soviet Union and capitalism West. 50s, 60s were the most outrageous time where Soviets published those crazy movies showing how inhumane West really are and how brave Soviet Union citizen and soldier should be to sacrifice own life for the sake of the country without even thinking differently. And all of the other characters and different behavior was presented as the weakness, and the weakness was even worse than treason. Soviet Union filmed a bunch of the propaganda movies relative to the Second World War, as Russians call it, Great Patriotic War, plus they filmed the same propaganda relative to the possible war between Soviets and West. Yes, by the time, West also filmed such as stories, but in Soviet Union it was presented as just one-way bravery act to sacrifice their own life once again for the sake of the country. Easy go, easy take. No one was speaking about suffering connected to the war. In those movies, if soldier dies, Soviet soldier, it is always sterile without any blood and with honor all the time. But later on in 70s, 80s, Soviet Union started to film the videos about the reality of the war, that the war is not that piece of glory, that it is connected to suffering, and suffering happening on both of the sides. But for Putin, then he was growing, he faced just this Soviet propaganda. It was just this time of the most conflicts between West and Soviet Union. The most nuclear time for the Soviet propaganda, and just imagine how Putin accepts, or he doesn't accept actually the collapse of the Soviet Union. For him personally, it's the huge tragedy. As he said many times before, it is a biggest tragedy of the 20th century. Not the Second World War and all of those massacres, and not the Stalin's regime that murdered millions of own people. For Putin, the greatest tragedy is the collapse of USSR. For rest of the people, mainly, it's freedom, it's good what happened to the Soviet Union, but for Putin, no. And now he thinks that his duty is to restore that empire. Soviet Union, Russian Empire doesn't really matter. He's the warlord commander, and if Russia is at war, that's the perfect time. And by the way, he compares the current war with what it was before. In multiple of his interviews, conferences, he say about it that the losses which Soviet Union sustained actually didn't cause the Soviet Union to collapse. Instead, after the Second World War, Soviet Union even rose higher. So it means that the current losses, 1 million total losses at least, and roughly 350,000 complete losses, for Putin it's nothing if you compare the scale with the Second World War, and he compares that. So Putin doesn't care about the losses. And that's why Russia continued to scroll and take more ground in Ukraine, because they have this Soviet policy in advancing, the strategy that Soviet Union used and sacrificed its armament to get to Berlin first before allies. Yes, for the single battle for Berlin, Soviet Union lost more soldiers than United States in entire Second World War. Just to get the city first, put Soviet flag and show it for Soviet propaganda TV. That's the price of the human life was in the Soviet Union and still in Russia. I'm telling you that for you to understand that this enemy, it may last for long because it has this human resource. Russian society is quite okay. They're not protesting. Well, maybe they're not okay, and on their kitchens they may tell something about Putin, something bad. But the perspective for the massive protests under current Russian regime, no, it's not possible. Well, maybe Russian society may get to this boiling point, as it happened many times before in the Russian history, but still we are quite far away from reaching that point. So again, as the Russian economy to suffer, it might take years and years. The same goes for protests in Russia. For this hour, this day, there is no any evidence that Russians are ready to push Russian regime to collapse, as, for example, Ukrainians did in 2014. That's the differences between our nations, between Russia and Ukraine. And even now, I'm sure that Ukrainians will not be okay with the current administration of Ukraine if Nabu, for example, finds out that Zelensky is in those corruption schemes. I'm sure that Ukrainian society will not take it as granted. Zelensky will be dismissed. I understand that changing the leader during the wartime is very bad, but corruption during war is even worse. So we're gonna see. Now, there are no direct accusations for Zelensky, but Nabu just started it, so we're gonna see. At least his circle is leaving the country. There are some of the cases open. It's a good sign. Again, we're switching to that topic, but guys, I want to tell you about the differences between Ukrainians and Russians. Russians are very volatile. They're not willing to act, at least right now. Ukrainian society is different. My friends, thank you so much for your kind support of my job with my daily updates on Patreon and also on membership of the channel. You may check out my Patreon with a link. It is in the video description just below, or you may join membership just pressing this some sort of the button. I guess it's here, join. But only if you have willing into it and opportunity. If not, it's okay, just press your like to this video and subscribe for the channel. That's how you boost this video in YouTube algorithms. That also helps me a lot. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.